Moraine.
Mr Speaker, this is a do-nothing bill from a do-nothing government. It's what we've come to expect from this government. But when it comes to accident compensation, there are so many things that government should be doing that this bill doesn't do. Andrew Little is absolutely right. There is nothing in this bill that the government can't do already, or that the ACC Corporation can't do already, and in fact does do already. But instead we've got this do-nothing bill from this do-nothing government. Why doesn't this bill do something to address the $350 million that government is overcharging every worker and every business in New Zealand every single year because of their determination to ignore the recommendations from ACC using exactly the criteria this legislation now codifies? Because, Mr Speaker, the truth is that ACC already have to have levy stability as one of its criteria. It already has to take account of full funding. It already has to do forecasting to make sure that the levies it recommends to the government every year do all of those things that the government's now pretending it's bringing forward for the first time in this bill. Nothing here is new. And Mr Young, when he spoke, talked about the ACC, the corporation coming before our Select Committee this year. He's absolutely right. When they came before our Select Committee, I asked them, every single one of these criteria that is outlined in this bill, do they already do that? And they said yes. They told the Select Committee that they already factored every single one of those things into account in formatting their recommendation, which they have given to that government, which that government has routinely ignored. They have kept the levies artificially high. For what reason? Well, Judith Collins told us the reason, Minister. Judith Collins said we have to get to surplus. That is the reason why the government has kept the levies artificially high. We have to get to surplus. And every single New Zealander is scratching their head and saying, sorry, we thought the point of ACC levies is to pay for the costs of injuries and accidents, not to help that government to fail in getting to surplus again this year, because that's in fact what's happened. And that minister should be extremely disappointed and angry, in fact, that her government has put her in a position where she has had to overcharge every worker and every business in New Zealand their ACC levies in order to try and make Bill English's surplus look a bit better. The surplus that never was, because even though they have trumped up and overinflated the ACC levies for at least 2 years now, Bill English still couldn't get the books to balance. He still couldn't get the books to balance, even though they had the cards up the sleeve. And the cards up the sleeve in that poker game were actually ACC levies being overcharged to every worker and every business in New Zealand to the tune of $350 million every year. And does this bill do anything about that? Does this bill do anything about that sleight of hand with those cards up the sleeve in that poker game? The answer, Minister, is no. It does nothing to address that issue. In fact, all it does is codify the situation that has currently been. It doesn't require the government to listen to ACC's recommendations. They can continue to ignore the recommendations from ACC. They can continue to overcharge businesses and workers, and they can continue to use this bill for the wrong reasons. Mr Speaker, for that very reason, the Labour Party will be bringing forward a supplementary order paper at the correct time in the passage of this bill to ensure that we do something about that sleight of hand that this government has put in place. We will be bringing forward an SOP that absolutely clarifies, without anyone being in doubt, that the government cannot use ACC levies for any other purpose but for paying for injuries and accidents in New Zealand and for injury prevention, because that is not what this government has been using it for. They said the ACC legislation allows them to use it for anything they damn well please. They said it's in the public interest. Well, we will bring a supplementary order paper forward that ensures that it can only be the public interest with regard to accidents and injuries, and not propping up Bill English's failed attempt to get to surplus, because that, by their own admission, is what they have been using it for, and that is not what our precious ACC system was set up to do. Another thing that this bill could do, but it doesn't do, is restore the funding cuts to injury prevention programs that government has governed over since National came into being, because the truth is that wouldn't that be the best thing we could do with ACC, is actually make sure that no one ever needs to use it because we're managing injuries so well. That's my dream. That's my dream, that we actually get to a situation where we are working so well with health and safety in our workplaces that we have got this so well under control that actually not many people have accidents and injuries that mean that they have to rely on ACC for the rest of their lives, because I can tell this House that that is not a very pleasant experience at all. But what did their government do? It cut ACC funding for injury prevention programs. How short-term is that? They don't want to prevent injuries. They don't want to prevent injuries. They just want to keep them happening, and they've got no plans to do anything about that. Well, Christopher Bishop, he doesn't think that ACC should have anything to do with preventing injuries. He thinks that what his government has done in cutting that funding for injury prevention programs is the right thing to do. The reality is, and I can see the minister's briefing the next speaker, the minister's briefing the next speaker to say, actually, we've started restoring the funding cuts, still not up to the level that they were in 2008. When Labor left government. The injury prevention programs are still not funded to the level that they were in 2008, and that, Mr Speaker, is a disgrace. So that's what this bill could be doing, is restoring the funding cuts for injury prevention programs, but it's not doing that. In fact, it's not doing anything that can't already be done. I want to spend a few minutes speaking about the name of this bill, the Accident Compensation, and in brackets, Financial Responsibility and Transparency Amendment Bill. Mr Speaker, in the midst of flying sheepgate that we've got happening on that side of the House, and the distractions that they are trying to bring about to distract us from flying sheepgate, like, suddenly there's another ghost ship on its way to, full of refugees on its way to New Zealand waters, because the New Zealand flag referendum obviously isn't distracting people enough from the issues that matter. This government is claiming that it's bringing forward a transparency bill with regard to accident compensation. Well, I challenge that government. I challenge that government when we bring forward the SOP that actually does require transparency from that government to support it. Because the minister has finally admitted, after 2 oral questions fudging the issue and 2 written questions fudging the issue, she's finally admitted she didn't even seek any Crown law advice on whether they had the legal right to overcharge ACC levies to prop up Bill English's failed surplus or not. Now, why would that be? The only reason why a minister would claim that she has the legal right to raise ACC levies to pay for their failed surplus bid, the only reason a minister would claim she's got that legal right but not even ask Crown law whether she's right or she's wrong is because she knows in her heart that what they have done is fundamentally wrong, and it is probably without any legal foundation. If she believed it was with legal foundation, that minister would have sought advice from Crown law and acted on it. But what that minister did was she didn't even seek Crown law advice on an issue which is deeply dodgy, and that is the overcharging of ACC levies to every worker and every business in New Zealand. Mr Speaker, all of those businesses know that if they had that $350 million, or their proportion of it, in their business, that would have grown the economy, that they would have used that to create jobs and to use it for research and development. That would have been a better way to grow the economy and get the books truly into surplus.
I call Alistair Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.